Here we are at question 20, the first question of the final passage of LSAT PrepTest 157's first section, the Reading Comprehension section. And as always, when we encounter a new passage, we are going to begin by ignoring the questions and going to passage-only view. We are then going to select a highlight color, doesn't matter which one you choose, but we're going to then read each paragraph, stop, and then highlight the one or two sentences that best capture the main idea and to a degree, the main conclusion of the author for that paragraph. Repeat that process for the subsequent paragraphs before reading all of our highlights to confirm that we understand the overall main idea for the passage, and then go into individual questions. Starting from the top, some environmentalists claim that the higher the international debt a nation carries, the more likely it is that the quality of life in that nation will suffer. These environmentalists argue that in a variety of ways, the effort a nation must expend to pay its debt hastens the depletion of its natural resources, increases pollution, or hampers domestic spending. The most common reason given by the environmentalists is known as the exports promotion hypothesis. According to this hypothesis, in order to increase foreign trade in a way that better allows it to repay international debt, a nation must divert resources away from sectors generating domestic goods and toward the production of export goods. Partly because of the greater volume involved, this causes more environmental damage than does production of goods for domestic consumption. One possible scenario frequently cited by environmentalists is that a nation might raze its forests for timber or to open up land on which to plant cash crops. Another reason the environmentalists give for their claims is that domestic spending can fall when a nation shifts money toward repayment of its debt. A nation may take funds away from healthcare, education, or improvements in such public services as water quality or sanitation. It can also adjust its economy in other potentially harmful ways in order to cut costs, for example, through the elimination of government subsidies for practices that reduce pollution or conserve natural resources. So, what we need to note is that we're actually getting a position presented by the argument that isn't necessarily the position of the author of this passage. So, everything is talking about these environmentalists. And we're going to just highlight what the environmentalists are saying generally in these two sentences. These environmentalists, again, doesn't necessarily matter who it is, what, environmentalists they specifically are. So we could just pick up there. These environmentalists argue that in a variety of ways, the effort a nation must expend to pay its debt hastens the depletion of its natural resources, increases pollution, or hampers domestic spending. The most common reason given by the environmentalists is known as the exports promotion hypothesis. And then everything else is just explaining and supporting the position that the environmentalists are saying, which is that the reason for the debt hastening depletion of natural resources is this exports promotion hypothesis. If we need details on what the exports promotion hypothesis is, we will reread. We are not going to highlight anything else at this moment. But moving on to the next paragraph. But the evidence for the environmentalists' claims is weak. Ooh, now we have the author's opinion. With respect to the exports promotion hypothesis, one recent study does suggest a positive correlation between international debt and deforestation, but also indicates that other factors besides debt may play a stronger role. Another study found only a slight positive correlation between debt and deforestation. In fact, in one nation, the correlation was negative, contrary to the environmentalists' expectations. The impact of debt on environmental indicators such as pollution or depletion of other resources has not yet been studied. Similarly, with respect to the domestic spending argument, while debt saddled nations might shift money away from programs designed to enhance quality of life, it is just as likely that they would shift the money from plans that, if implemented, would have a negative impact on the environment. For example, they might abandon plans to build new dams or roads or eliminate subsidies that promote fertilizer or pesticide use. The extent, then, to which a nation's quality of life is connected to the size of its international debt must be considered unknown. Indeed, a case could be made that at least some of the fiscal discipline or economic restructuring imposed by debt may rein in potentially harmful spending. We certainly need this first sentence because it directly gives us the author's position about everything we read in terms of exports promotion hypothesis and debt leading to environmental degradation from the environmentalists in the first paragraph. But then we want to think critically about which of the other sentences best gives us the author's final position. And I'd actually argue it's this final sentence as well. And there's a lot we're not highlighting, and that again is intentional. It is the approach that unless there's an absolute reason, we're going to limit ourselves to two highlighted sentences for any paragraph, even two paragraphs that are as big as these are. So let's go to the top and confirm that we've got the overall main idea for the author and everything else from just these four sentences from two gigantic paragraphs. Starting from the top in pink, these environmentalists argue that in a variety of ways, the effort a nation must expend to pay its debt hastens the depletion of its natural resources, increases pollution, or hampers domestic spending. The most common reason given by the environmentalists is known as the exports promotion hypothesis. But the evidence for the environmentalist claims is weak. Indeed, a case could be made that at least some of the fiscal discipline or economic restructuring imposed by debt may rein in potentially harmful spending. And I would say that even though we've only highlighted like four sentences out of what has to be at least a couple of dozen, I don't need more to understand the main idea. So at this point, we will move on to the questions with our very limited highlights to work through the individual tasks of this passage.